Yeah, women in sex work face violence, yes, but the kind of violence they face is more to do with physical, emotional, sexual, and also psychological. All of them are related. Basically, the reason women in sex work face violence is because of the stigma which is there in sex work. Sex work is actually tolerated in India. It is not illegal because the law does not give any kind of punishment for people who is practicing sex work. But as it goes, sex work anywhere is having a stigma because of the multiple sexual partners they have. The thing with women in sex work is, one, the women whom we are dealing with basically are from a very poor strata of the society, economically poor, who has no formal education or a very little formal education. And the family they come from or they're born in are also from poverty, where everyday living is a struggle. And most of the women, from what we have seen and also from the studies which we have seen, are these girls who are born in a family of poverty are married by the time they're 14 or 15 or on the onset of puberty, where there is no formal education, no financial backup, and once married, no parental backup also for them. Once they're married, they're out of the house, and they're married to much older men, so that the women do get some kind of a security. But they're married also into families which are not doing so well. Again, they get into a family which is into poverty, where again the same cycle starts, where they don't have much education. The boy they would have married to will be having some kind of a work which is basically in an informal sector or a non-formal sector, where he wouldn't have any skills much to develop his to earn more. So there is again hand-to-mouth existence. And because of the age gap of being older, and these men start some kind of a violence with these women, because these are younger, they look attractive as they're growing. So violence starts within the house, and in the span of few years, what we have seen in our studies is either they are widowed early or they are deserted by the husbands. Now, with no family backup, no formal education backup, no skills, no exposure to the outside world, these women without choice have to get into sex work either by themselves or they are introduced to sex work. And their main reason of getting into sex work, as we have seen, is to take care of the children, because by that time they would have widowed or been deserted, they would have 1, 2 or 3 children who would be very small. So they need shelter, they need food. That's a primary reason for them to take care and get into sex work. And once into sex work, there is no looking back, because they are manipulated, or they are completely in the hands of either the pimps or the brothel madams or the women who's introduced them into sex work, their peers. So initially they wouldn't know how to handle themselves. So it starts off with the police violence. Why police violence? Because the police would know that these women are practicing sex work and they are easy targets. They're vulnerable to these kind of violence. What women has always told us when we started work with the high-risk group, that is the female sex workers, is they've always told us about the police harassing them, taking off their money or asking them for favors of free sex, or detaining them in the police station overnight, or sending them off to destitute homes without the consent of the women, and not knowing, not understanding that these women are into sex work not for pleasure but for the need of their children to bring them up, and the children back home are all by themselves. It all started like that when we started working with the women in sex work, when we started working on HIV prevention programs. As we were working the programs, we started realizing, these women's primary need is not HIV prevention, but stopping the violence which is happening, or addressing the violence which is happening in their lives. And as we started getting acquainted to this women in sex work, we started getting to know, yeah, police violence surely is one of the reasons we need to address, but there are other forms of violence they also face. One from the clients, because they're vulnerable, they don't have any support system. And once with the clients are more powerful than in terms of physical, or in terms of monetary, or in terms of confinement. The clients have more power towards this women in sex work. Then it could be the pimps who are more powerful than them. Secondly is also these women in sex work, because they are either widowed or destitute or deserted, they do also have regular clientele who start taking advantage of them. And some of them also becomes their partners or lovers, because there is such a need for these women to get emotional anchor. And these men, one or two men whom they have as lovers, starts also harassing her for money. There is also, because of the intimate relationship they share, there is a lot of violence from the intimate partner, whom they consider everything in their lives, where there is physical abuse, where there is verbal abuse, where there is sexual violence. And also many a times we have seen that women in sex work also face economic violence, where all the earnings of hers is somehow manipulated and taken off by her lover or partner. And many of the times it's also these women, since they don't have any backup, they would come and stay with in their maternal homes, where parents, brothers, siblings also harass them, and they also face violence within the family. One is because she's come back home after being a widow or being deserted. Two, she's dependent on the parents because they need to take care of the children. Three is also they kind of get a clue that she's doing something which is not respected in the society, that she's into sex work. So there is all kinds of abuses which is hurled to her, which is very, very painful for her. So these are the kind of violence which women face. But if you look at it, it's more to do with the background of how they get into sex work and how they get vulnerable to get into sex work and also face these kind of violence. We had this case where a woman in one of the districts was living with a government servant. They have been living for quite some time of their years as a live-in partner. It was so, the bond was so stronger that she also decided to have children with him. So she had about 2 children with them, and they did have a good relationship. But after 5-6 years of the relationship and living together as a live-in partner, the man her partner started suspecting that she is also into sex work, or rather was into sex work. And he slowly started perpetrating violence on her. It started with abusing her with bad words, which would really hamper her day-to-day life. It would affect her emotionally, her productivity of day-to-day life, taking care of children and things like that. And it didn't stop there. And day by day, week by week, it would go from verbal violence, then it would go to, they would have fights over it, then it became so physical that he started harassing her physically. So finally he threatened her that I'm going to leave you, and I don't want to live with a woman like you. And it so happened that for these sex workers, as part of the project of Samvedana, which is a UNTF grant, we've been having a legal awareness program for women in sex work. And it all comes, these women gather in support groups, or they come into the self-help groups where they save money. And she also was part of it, because it's a women's group. And she learned quite a bit about it. She also understood that, yeah, this is domestic violence, because that is the awareness which was given in the legal rights training which she had received. What she did was, she went and complained it to the police and said, this is what is happening to me, and my live-in partner is harassing me, and he's threatening now to leave, and I have no source of income, and I also have 2 children from him. The Domestic Violence Act not only in India covers married people, it also covers women who is also having live-in partners. So the police acted on that, and the Women and Child Development department, where they have protection officers, they came into the picture, and the free legal aids also came into the picture, and there they had a mediation, and in the process, in a month or so, in few months, it was settled that the man decided he doesn't want to stay with the wife. So she saw to it, and the Women and Child Development Organization and the free legal aids mediated, and she got a bond of 1.5 lakhs on her name. And he had to do it, he had to give it because he had children out of her. So this is something which I think is a good case story of women. If awareness of legal rights is given to them, they would know how to ask for their rights and get their rights. The other thing which a lot of women in sex work face is violence from the clients, which women in sex work have many times confided during their meetings, during a workshop, or during sharing meetings. There was this woman who confided that one of her regular client had asked her to come, and since he was a regular client, she did not even doubt him, and she went to the place where he told he will come and pick her up from. And he later told her that we've been together for quite some time, so let's go to a hillock and we will spend some time together there. So this woman, anyway, she's kind of familiar with this client, so she decided to go with him. She went with him, and there, after a few minutes, she realized that this man is not alone. He has about 5 of his friends waiting there for him. Then she looked at him and said, "Hello, you said that you are the only one, but you have 5 friends here." And one, she's in a place where she's alone. 2, she's in a place where nobody can be reached, and she can't even cry for help. She can't run away from there because she's surrounded by these 5 to 6 men. Her situation was such that she didn't have much to do but give in, and multiple times she was sexually violated, and they drank. They were all into alcohol, and after they completely abused her sexually and violated her completely, they inserted a beer bottle into her vagina, broke the beer bottle, and left her there in pain, in bleeding, and just came away. This woman, being completely helpless, didn't know, she couldn't get up from her place. You can imagine the pain she would have gone through with the kind of violence which went through her. And after some time, she realized that I need to call somebody because she was in so much of pain, and she was all by herself. Her mobile, she called up her peer educator, explained that this is her situation. The peer educator then, with the crisis management team, which is a team by the community-based organization, came there, took her to the hospital, gave her first aid, gave her counseling, and also lodged a complaint in the police. But sadly, it could not be taken up because these men were politically strong and had connections. So the case was not registered. And what also came to know of it is these women did not know their rights, that they could file a complaint and they have to actually also write a first FIR, and they could get a copy and they can further work on it, which they did not know. And this particular incident was told to us when we initiated this program to address violence against sex worker. So this is something which is the truth of women who is into sex work, and there are multiple times they would have faced these kind of violence which they face. The same kind of a violence, which happens now after they have gone through a legal rights training, and also they are aware that yes, this is violence, because initially they would think, okay, we are doing sex work and whatever violence we face, we deserve it because we are not doing the right work or we are doing bad work and this is part of our profession or work. They would take it and not expose themselves to the kind of violence they have or even complain about it. But today, after being aware that yes, they are going through violence, they need to work on that, and they also know their rights, that if I am facing violence, what is my next step to keep myself safe. So these women now, when they also go to a new client or when the client asks them to come for a new place, they follow the safety measures which they have been through. The telling, yes, one, don't ever go to a place where there's no telephone range. Two is to charge their telephone by currency and also charge their phone so that there is enough of battery. And also before leaving, call up any of their friends and tell them where they are going, so that if they don't return at a certain time, the friends can come looking for them and save them. These are some of the practices which is being incorporated in the program, and women are very much for this kind of safety measures because they don't want to go through the violence which they have been going through previously, either by clients or by pimps or anybody who's much more powerful than them. As a project manager of Project Samvedana, which is United Nations Trust Fund project, which is a project to address violence faced by women in sex work. This project is basically, we have implemented it with the community-based organizations which are already working on HIV prevention programs. And from our past experience, we have also seen that HIV prevention programs, the first thing to address is violence because that is their priority. And next comes HIV prevention program. So with Samvedana, which is addressing violence of women in sex work, what we have seen is, yes, surely building awareness among sex workers about the violence they face, about the rights they have, and also a correlation with the other NGOs and civil society organizations which is working with women and for the cause of women is an important component, because collectively they can work for the cause of violence irrespective of the profession they are working in. And because women by large, as the data tells and also from what we see in the surveys, women do face violence irrespective of what profession they are in, either it is within the house or outside the house. The cause for addressing violence becomes important. So the collective of the women's organization becomes important to address violence women face. The second part of it is the advocacy, where it is important for the state actors to understand that women in sex work are vulnerable and the vulnerable population in the society who are easy targets for violence which they face in their day-to-day life. So the way Project Samvedana went on is they first of all sensitize the media, the police, the judiciary, who also in the process, judiciary also took up the free legal aids as part of it. Because women in sex work don't have that kind of money to go to have lawyers to talk for them or have advocates to talk for them. So free legal aids also is part of this. So the first step was to surely sensitize the media personnel, so that once they are sensitized, the authentic real stories they could bring out of the lives of women in sex work and write positive stories about women in sex work, of kind of violence they face and who could be their perpetrators and what people could do about reducing the stigma and mainstreaming them. The police also were very, once we went and spoke to them, showed them the data, the kind of violence which women in sex work are facing, they gave us time and also issued a memorandum to all the police stations in the state of Karnataka that we could conduct sensitization programs on the violence which women are facing, because violence again has an interface with HIV. They're vulnerable to HIV because of the violence which they face. The police are trained, sensitized, and then the judicial system was very open to the idea that many of the times when women in sex work are arrested, taken to the court, the judges wouldn't understand the kind of issues or problems the women in sex work has, because of the stigma that she's a sex worker. Many of the times she's made to wait from morning to night, and at the end of the day she's, without even asking her, they send them to state homes or destitute homes. Like, not even, I mean, her acceptance is not even asked whether she could be sent or not, or she's fined, and that is it. That was the scenario before. But now with the judiciary system being very open to understanding the issues of women in sex work, have also opened gates for women in sex work, that they could go and knock the doors of the judiciary to get justice for the kind of violence they face. And the judiciary system is very open, because in Karnataka we have sensitized especially judges who take up cases on ITPA, that is Immoral Traffic Prevention Act, which most of the time the women are booked on. She's supposed to be a victim, but those people, when they don't know that this law is more for the perpetrators and not for the sex workers, we sensitized the judges on the ITPA laws, the social aspect of the life of a sex worker with testimonies, opened a lot of doors for the women in sex work. Now the judiciary system is more open to it, and once the judiciary system is open to it, many of the district judges took it upon themselves. As the judges training was going on for sensitization of issues faced by women in sex work, the judges who completed the training, many of them were in a position of power. They were district principal judges. So they took upon themselves, understanding that yes, these women are subjugated, they need more sensitization, and they said, okay, we alone cannot be working, but the first contact of these women is with the police, and also the media also needs to understand it. They also involved. They went back to their district, had a meeting with the SP there, the superintendent of police in the district, told him the issues which these women in sex work face, and got his buy-in that, and saw to it the police in the districts are sensitized on the issues faced by women. And thereby what happened is, many of the district SPs agreed on this, and we did have training programs for the police in the districts, thanks to the district principal judges, because of their understanding and sensitization and the sensitivity they have towards sex workers. We could train and sensitize the policemen in understanding the issues faced by women in sex work. And today, when women in sex work post this training of the police, go to the police to seek help on the issues they face, the police do regard them with respect like any other women, and do help them also, which in our previous program wasn't there, because one of the perpetrators of violence were also police. But now, post the sensitization program with the police, we see that the police are more helpful towards women in sex work, and also so is media, which is also printing a lot of positive stories of women in sex work. Now the other side of it, as I was already telling, that the community-based organization also work in tandem and collectively work with the other women's organization. They have formed a coalition at the district level with just not women's organization, and also organizations who give social entitlements to citizens of this country. So when things like a ration card, voter ID, identification card, which they would need for every step of their life to to get any kind of beneficiary from the government is also another thing which is working very well. Now many of the districts have this correlations with civil society organizations, which includes just not women's organization but other organizations also work in tandem, and now it is more to do with collective energy, and if any of the NGOs or CBOs require any kind of help, they help each other and the strength is from within. So this program as of now working with sex workers has taken a very slow trail, but yes, it is moving on sustenance. In this 1.5 years, we have also trained judges, about 435 judges around Karnataka. We have about only 3 to 4 districts to be covered in the entire state of Karnataka, and we have trained about 13,000. Our target was to train 13,000 policemen, but our target now has been a little lesser because we also understand that the pressure of law and order is very high to the police. So we have covered around 6,000 policemen has been sensitized in few of the districts of Karnataka, and about 500 plus media persons has been sensitized on the issues of women and sex work. What we're also looking at is, today the program of Samvedana is there, but once the program is over, we are looking for sustenance, because this is a program which has to be carried out by the community themselves. So the reason also why we have chosen women and sex work organization, the community-based organization, is they take the ownership of it, which they have already started taking the ownership of this program. They have formed crisis management teams which basically addresses the violence faced by women in sex work. They are also having an advocate who is a part-time advocate, part of the community-based organization, who is also linked to the free legal aids and also the counseling centers where women who face violence do get some kind of a relief, which is part of women and child development. And these kind of state organization connections with them and working along with them helps sustenance of this huge program, which is violence against women and sex workers, to address their issues and continue towards sustenance.
As judges, there is nothing we can do. All that we can do is to treat these women with dignity in court, extend all help and support which the law gives to them, and the role of a judge in this case is corrective in nature. You have to protect her. Therefore, the remand is to the protective house. It is not a jail. So treat them with dignity. See that their basic human rights are not violated. Whatever benefit the law has given, it should reach them. And under any circumstances, when they are in your custody, see to it that they are not exploited. I'm sure this 2 days interaction will make you a different person. The way you look at this problem will be totally different from Monday. I can assure you, with our past experience, from Monday, you will be a different person. Thank you.